Welcome to the Bradley podcast. On today's show, we're talking about icicles. They're cold, they're frozen, they're slightly spiky. Icicles. Also, just a quick announcement to make about David's pencils. And my friend David, he makes pencils, and they're great pencils. They've got lead in them. Well, it's not actual lead, it's graphite, made of wood. You can write with them, you can draw with them, you can do anything you want with them, because that's what pencils don't have rules. There are no guidelines on how to use pencils. Don't stab people with them. Don't throw them at strangers. But they're also very heavy pencils. They're the heaviest pencils you could probably find. David's pencils, they're probably too heavy for your pencil case.
Hey, what you doing?
It's my podcast. It's my show. I was just talking about the sponsors thing. I'm good. Okay. I'm good, thank you.
I'll make mine then.
Okay.
Only mine.
Our other sponsor is Kyle's Pens. David's Pencils and Kyle's Pens. Kyle's Pens are terrible. They're horrible. The ink is poisonous. If you try to write with them, you are bound to a horrible contract with the devil, which allows you to be tortured endlessly with pictures of the UKIP party, which is always a frightful affair. So I do not recommend Kyle's Pens, even though they are actually sponsors of this podcast. And now I've said this, all of the funding is probably going to be cut, and we'll never have another episode of this podcast again. RIP this podcast. But seeing as we're never going to have another episode of this podcast again, let's talk about some other things that I don't like.
Help! We've been robbed!
Stop, evildoers!
No. I mean, I like them. I've taken this bit too far now. Oh well. It was a good bit. I'm gonna burn in hell. Bradley's podcast. Brought to you by the Nazi Nation. It's irony. It's just irony. I you know. Darby, don't kill me.
Are you still talking to yourself?
Well, this is my podcast.
Oh.
You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this whole segment I've done.
I'm sorry.
There was a whole segment.
You're not talking to yourself. You're professionally hosting
Professional
your own talk show.
Professional podcast. It's
Your
been
talk show featuring.
It's a
Bradley
great show.
Bradley.
I hope you're gonna release this as like a separate thing.
Yeah, I was planning to actually.
It deserves a whole thing.
I'm gonna go to the toilet so you can talk.
It's
to
been a
yourself
pretty
a bit.
good show so far.
I mean, you know,
I'm not talking to myself. I have an audience. I have a whole audience.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Some of it I think needs to be edited a little bit. I made some comments about that I regret.
Oh.
I thought it was a funny bit, and then I realised that sometimes the irony isn't.
When the time comes, your fate will be in my hands.
Yeah. So, I just want to talk about these cheese sticks that are all the rage these days. Cheese sticks. They're like
cheese tips.
They're like sticks of pastry with sort of cheese inside of them. Now, I have no quarrel with the pastry or the cheese. But what really bothers me is the stick part. I mean, could they not think of any other shapes, you know? Cheese circles, perhaps? I'm a big cheese balls. I love balls. I think cheese balls would be a more appropriate shape for a cheese pastry. But cheese sticks, you know, they're okay, but I feel as though they don't have enough substance. There's not enough, I was gonna say meat, enough, you know, they need to be chunkier, I think. Chunky cheese sticks. That's the new branded item that I'm going to make. Bradley's Chunky Cheese Sticks. Look out for those on shelves, in places. Look out for your local bakery.
Couple questions
Here's
about the toilet.
Darby's got a couple of questions about the toilet.
One, what happened to the door handle?
Well, since I became a superhero,
Your super strength has
I
not been
went
able
to
to contain it.
I went to pull the handle, and it just came off. It was like a whole Spider-Man moment.
That seems pretty bad.
It was pretty scary, really.
Is that why the toilet seat's a bit broken too?
But look, real talk, okay?
Yeah, real talk.
I mean, how have you felt since the horrible accident that you went through 5 years ago?
I feel like a new man.
You feel like a new man. How's it changed you? If you don't
I'm
know,
a man now.
Andrew Darby here, the guest on my podcast, was 5 years ago. He was in a horrible accident involving a trampoline, a pint of Pepsi, and a large sumo wrestler. I'm not exactly. Why don't you fill us in on the details? The trampoline, the pint of Pepsi, and the large sumo wrestler accident, as it's commonly known.
I was bouncing on a trampoline.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know how it happened, but I flew off.
You flew off.
And I fell into like this big thing with Pepsi and.
Oh.
And then it just so happened that was the swimming pool for sumos.
Oh.
So the sumo jumped in on me and like squished me, and then
Oh no.
when I breathed in, just Pepsi went everywhere.
Has this been a particularly traumatic experience for you? Would you say?
I am now scared of trampolines, Pepsi, and sumos.
It's very specific phobias you have. Very specific phobias. Now talk from another one of our sponsors, Christopher's earphones. Christopher's earphones are the best earphones if you are deaf. If you are a deaf person, buy Christopher's earphones, because what they do is they make no sound, but they are very comfortable. But if you can actually hear, I would not recommend Christopher's earphones, because Christopher earphones will make you deaf. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you plug them into. They produce ultrasonic frequencies that even at the lowest level will absolutely destroy your eardrum. Christopher's earphones. You've got to be deaf to buy them.
Da-da!
Anyway, thank you for listening to this Bradley's podcast, the final and only episode, seeing as I've been insulting so many of our sponsors. If you want this podcast to continue, consider coming round my house twice a day, where I will sit in my room and talk to myself, and you are welcome to stand outside and listen. This has been Bradley's podcast. Have a wonderful evening.